All right. So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us for our June webinar series from Arizona Growth Advisors, where we're highlighting all of the business thought leader best practices and speakers and topics that we've done over the years. We've done these over the years in terms of the webinar series. We launched this part of our service April of last year, and have been very fortunate to have all of the business thought leaders who have spoken at our all member meetings and in our roundtables come back and share their wisdom in this kind of a format. So if you've seen one on the list there, if you were able to attend it, congratulations. If you see some of these thought leaders that you would like to see their webinar, just reach out to John. John can ship you a link. We upload these webinars up to YouTube. They are not publicly accessible. You have to have our link to get in there. We're protecting all of our business thought leader intellectual property, but we're happy to share that with you so that you can view it later, and or if you want to especially share it with your team. Tremendous tool to use for development with your leadership team and any of your types of reports. So as a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about Lori Taylor, who kicked us off last year, one of our favorite best practices around stages of growth. So here's what we had. And of course, last month, we were fortunate to have Chris Mersaw, who's the president of Upgrading, with us. So today we're very fortunate to have with us, as everybody knows, our education roadmap is based upon the 7 attributes of agile growth. One of the new attributes that were added when we went to this under Gravitas Impact was the systems attribute. There were 3 of them that were really missing from the 4 decisions that we used to work with. One was leadership, one was the customer, and the other one was systems. And it's no doubt that was a gaping hole in the things we worked at. And Keith did a great job getting David Jenyns to join us. David is here to speak with us today. His short bio: in 2016, David successfully systemized himself out of his business, one of Australia's most trusted digital agencies, Melbourne SEO. Through this process, he became a systems devotee, founding System Hub and writing Systemology. Today, his mission is to free all business owners worldwide, thanks for reaching out to Arizona, from the daily operations of running their business. That's the classic definition of not working in, but working on your business. To achieve this, David spends most of his time supporting a growing community of certified systemologists as they help business owners implement the book Systemology. He also delivers workshops, keynote addresses, and hosts his own popular podcast, Business Process Simplified, which I'm sure David will provide links to, and he'll talk about his book at the end. So David, welcome. Thank you for being here. Let me stop my share so that we can pass it over to you and let you take us on our journey today.
Fantastic. What a warm introduction. Thank you. And I know we've got a lot to cover. We've got 60 minutes, and I'll make sure we have some time for Q&A, and we're going to do some hot seats with Richard, Kerry, and Eric as well. So that'll be exciting. Just before we kick things off, and maybe with your help as well, Rick and John, I'd love to find out a little bit about, so you can type it into the chat if you like, just why business systems are important. Like when you think of business systems, why do you think Keith added it into the 7 attributes? Why do you think that they're going to be important in your business? What are those reasons? Are there any common ones you can think of, Rick and John? And feel free, you guys. I mean, we've got a smaller group, so you can type them into the chat if you like, or even just voice them out. Like that's fine. So we've got efficiency. I think that's a biggie. Another one that sort of pops up, scaling the business is another big one. Elimination of mistakes is a big one. Waste reduction.
Since I misspelled mistakes. That was quite Freudian, wasn't
it? That's right. It was all by design.
Hey, I was an architecture major, not high typing skills, you know.
Also creating a greater value compared to your competition.
Right.
Yes, more value, and also more value on exit is another huge one. Gives you the optionality of exit. Without systems, oftentimes it ends up being a fire sale if it's forced. And if you add systems in, you reduce that risk for the potential buyer around that key person dependency. So removing key person dependency, Richard's got in there, setting and clarifying expectations. I think a lot of business owners these days, if we rewind the clock, many years ago, there were some early people in sort of the business system space like Michael Gerber and things like that, who really set the tone for building the case why systems are important. And I very rarely have a discussion these days with business owners where they don't agree that business systems aren't important. So part 2 of my question is, why haven't you systemized to date to the level that you would like to have systemized? What gets in the way of systemization? And similarly, we can lean on the group here, either type it into the chat or is it, I'll give you some common ones I often hear. I don't have time, which links into what Rick says around not enough resources. I don't like systems is another one I often hear from business owners. They say systems are just, they don't get me excited. And it's a prioritization situation of all the 50 million things I could be doing and all of the fires that are burning. Systems never seems like the most important thing I could be working on. So it oftentimes gets prioritized down. And then there's other common ones, things like just not knowing where to get started. What are the first few systems I should be thinking about? What are the mission critical and core ones? And too structured time. So there's quite a few that pop up there. And you'll think about it for yourself, like what has stopped you? If we all know the benefits of business systems, and that's, we're all agreed that they're really important. What is getting in the way? And is it something that you keep saying, oh, I'll get to it someday, one day? And that's a big part of what I want to focus on today. We're going to talk about how do we shift this and make systems important and urgent, and how do we realize the cost it's having for not systemizing your business to date? Because there's probably a lot, it's costing you a lot more than you realize. So I'm going to just swap over to my slide deck here.
Yeah, as you close that out, Dave, it's, we take members through something where they try to identify their key processes. And that sometimes is a struggle to really understand what are the 3 to 5 processes that really drive their business, and what the relationship, who owns it, and then how do we measure it is always a key breakdown.
Yeah. And we'll go through the exercise with Richard.
I think there's another factor. A lot of businesses grew, and the systems they have now are limping along because they no longer are capable of handling where the business is going. And those systems, in most cases, don't talk to each other, which means the conversion to something else is going to be a significant effort in their mind.
Yes, yeah, definitely, with systems getting outdated and some people buying in on systems and others not buying in on systems, and not closely tying together when a task is assigned to have clear systems at that point in time. So there's a lot of these little factors that kind of all mix together, which kind of erode this systems culture that you need to build to really build a thriving, growing company. So if what we can do today, like my goal here is to really light that fire. And I want to actually grab Daniel's comment here, because he said the biggest hesitation is that it isn't clear the benefits would justify the time and the resources required. And a secondary hesitation is that I'm not sure which systems framework we should use or where to get started. So we'll definitely answer a few of those questions around where to get started, and even just giving you some ideas on those first couple of steps, I think will get you on the path. And as far as justifying the cost and the effort, a couple of things will come to mind. People often have a picture in their head of what they think systems are, which we'll break down today, because oftentimes people look at companies like McDonald's and things like that, and they think, oh, that's what a systemized business looks like. And that's looking at a company that has built systems over 60 years, and we're looking at the finished product. And we need to go back and think about how and where did they get started. And not only that, I mean, none of us here are probably building a hamburger business. So we're not going to copy McDonald's anyway, because our approach is going to be very different, which we'll touch on. So as far as like building up and understanding the time and investment required, and how much it's costing you not to systemize, what are some of the biggest challenges that the businesses in the group that are facing at the moment? And you can type some of those into the chat as well. Rick and John might have some ideas. I know we had some discussion earlier, and things like, finding talent is a biggie, or everything about labor at the moment, supply chains, profitability. Some businesses, depending on where you're at, coming into a recession, things around generating leads, closing of business, like all of these are pressing problems. And I have this perception that all problems are systems problems. So every problem in your business, if you trace it back to the root level, it's always a systems problem. If you're having issues finding and keeping great staff, well, you're going to need a better recruitment and onboarding system. If you're having troubles with profitability, you might need to tighten up the delivery systems. If you've got lead generation issues, getting clients, then you need to work on your marketing systems. If you can't convert, you've got to work on your sales systems. All business problems, if you just keep tracing them back, whether it's a documented system or an undocumented system, the way that things are getting done, if you get that systems thinking, it makes it much easier to work on and solve problems. So I suppose to try and think about, Daniel's comment earlier, think about what are some of the most pressing issues you currently have in your business. Think about how much it is costing you those problems, and then understand that going to work on them at the systems level, which really is all about how do we find best practice and just say, this is the way that we do things here, and make it repeatable and consistent. Business systems is about creating repeatability and removing key person dependency. So if you kind of think of it like that, then it kind of helps to build the case on how we can make this both urgent and important, and something that needs to be focused on, because you're solving whatever your most pressing problems are in the business. And I know that it's not natural necessarily for business owners to think with a systems thinking mindset, because business owners are often wired differently. They're they're problem solvers, but oftentimes they're doing things themselves, and it's quicker to do things themselves. And they're these big picture people. And to make matters worse, oftentimes business owners and their leadership teams, because they're busy, they don't even necessarily like writing systems and processes. And the good news is that's actually quite normal. And the truth is, I'm very much the same. I don't like writing out documents and systems and processes. Even though I'm the systems guy, I've written a systems book, I don't write out process myself. As a business owner, what you want to do is fall in love with what business systems can bring and a systems culture can bring, not the process of the documentation. Systems bring freedom. They solve these challenges. They remove the key person dependency. They increase those products. They help to retain staff. And ultimately, it gives you further optionality in your business. So rather than going through a little bit about my story, and we'll talk about it at the end, we'll just send you all a copy of the Systemology book. So I'll tell you how you can grab one of those. I'll just get you to shoot me an email, and I'll get a copy of that sent out to you. So I don't have to go through my story. And Rick kindly did a nice introduction at the start. I've been involved in a good number of businesses that I've started from scratch, systemized them and sold them. The last one being the digital agency that Rick mentioned. On the start of the back of the last sale, I realized what a hole there was in this business systems space. And that just seemed to be an area that I gravitated towards, because I felt like it was such an underserviced and undercooked part of business. And some initial work had been done there, but I felt like a lot more work needed to be done. So that evolved into Systemology. We launched the book. And then from there, we've kind of gone from strength to strength as we license out the material to business coaches and consultants who help to deploy Systemology, and we call those systemologists. So again, that'll be in the book, and we'll just send you a copy. So that way we can focus on how can we have the biggest impact today in the minimum time. So this is what we're going to cover. We're going to go through where are you now? We'll talk a little bit about what is Systemology, where do you start? We'll talk about quickly and easily creating systems, which really answers some of the questions that Daniel had as well, and how to make sure that we get your team on board. Make sure we have some time for some Q&A, and about partway through where it's where do we start? We're going to work with the team over at Facings of America, and we're going to do a live example to help you kind of answer that question, and everybody else can follow along with the exercise and apply it to their own business. So that's the plan. So let's keep moving, and we'll jump straight in. First thing I'd love to think about is where are you now and where do you want to get to? In the book, I talk about this idea of the 4 stages of business systemization. And of the different clients that we've worked with, generally businesses will fall into one of these 4 stages. And if you can figure out where you are, you figure out where you want to get to, it then makes it much easier to go, well, what needs to be done? Because each stage you have to actually, you can't jump from survival all the way up to saleable, because certain things need to be in place. So if you know what stage you're at, then you know what the next piece to work on is. So just run it through your own filter as we go, and thinking in terms of your business and where you think your business is at. You can kind of scribble that down on some paper as you make your notes. So first one at the base of the pyramid, this is survival mode. This is where the team makes things up. Firefighting mode, they don't really like process. Very often the business owner is the bottleneck, and oftentimes they don't even necessarily recognize they're the bottleneck. It's almost like unconscious incompetence. And that's where a lot of people, if they're not even aware of systems, are. Now, this group being an astute group, understanding the importance of systems, even just having an understanding of that, a conscious incompetence helps to move you up to the next level. And level 2 is where we call it stationary, because this is where the systems are stored in the heads of your team members. And typically you're very key person dependent. Some people have some processes, some people don't. And oftentimes it feels like you're treading water, because you're dependent on key people. You've grown to a certain size, you hit this ceiling and you kind of move sideways because you're so dependent on the people and they're already at capacity. It means that, there's not a huge amount of growth there. Now, the secret to move through this stage is we have to extract that IP and how things are done from the heads of those team members, and then get it into a central brain that everybody can access. So that's that second stage. The third stage is where you have things partially documented. We call it scalable. And it's a bit funny because people get to scalable and they think, this is where I want to be. We've got some systems in place, but it's oftentimes very clunky, because you've got some systems are sitting in Dropbox, some systems are sitting in Google Drive, some systems are on somebody's desktop. So like they're scattered all over the place. It's quite clunky and inconsistent. Maybe you've got a project management platform, maybe you don't, but there's no real connect between who is doing what by when, and clarity around what those tasks are. And probably the biggest reminder or a way to know that you're in this stage, if you're constantly having to remind the team to do stuff. And it is kind of working, but it's in pockets. Parts of the business aren't as well organized as others. Maybe you've dialed in your marketing, maybe you've dialed in your delivery, but your HR's rubbish or your finance is rubbish. That's generally a good way to think about it. Now, to move through this stage, a big part of it is you need to organize that knowledge. So if stationary is about extracting the knowledge, then scalable is about organizing the knowledge. And then the last stage we call is saleable. And it's not that you're going to sell that, but rather you build it as though it could be sold. Because once you do that, a lot of you have probably read the book Built to Sell. And there's a lot of books that talk about this idea of whether you sell or not, building it to sell sets you up in a really great position. And you have things completely documented at that point in time. The business runs a bit more like a Swiss watch. And the real dead giveaway that you're at Saleable is the team starts to say, this is how we do things here. New team members come on board and they want an answer to something, and existing team members can say, hey, oh, this is how we do it here, or hey, this is the process on how to do that. And it's a constant pursuit of perfection. Once you get there, this is where you start to optimize process. Where some people get wrong or get off track is they try and optimize too early. Oftentimes, your business is already working really well, and it's just a matter of capturing the best practice and making it consistent. It's that repeatability, it's consistency, and it's not, removing key person dependency. If you get a lot of those issues solved, then you'll actually find the business will function infinitely better. And that's a big part of what we do with Systemology. It's just about how do we create repeatability? And we do that by removing key person dependency. So if you think a little bit about where you are, I don't know if you want to either type it into the chat. If we said that survival was number 1 and saleable is number 4, and maybe you're sitting partway through some stages. Maybe you go, oh, I'm in stationary and scalable. That would be a 2-3. Get a little bit of an idea of where you feel your business is. Type it into the chat, because that'll give me a little bit of an idea just how to pitch some of what we're going to go through a little bit later. Rick, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
Yeah, what I would comment, David, we do a lot of work, and one of the best practices we work from is stages of growth. Was a study done under navigating the growth curve, and stage 3, stage 4 companies. Stage 3 is the greatest inhibitor to growth is the entrepreneur, because they're that choke point, because they haven't created that. Stage 3 requirement is the creation of the leadership teams, the empowerment, the accountability and responsibility in the stage 3. That's kind of 20 to 40 employees. We often get new members who join us at that point because they've grown to a certain size and they don't know how to scale beyond that. Oftentimes it is that entrepreneur who's the greatest inhibitor. And then once they get beyond that point into what we refer to as stage 4, it's all about process, having replicable processes that allow them to consistently deliver the brand promise, consistently deliver what they're promising to the marketplace. And that's the kind of in the 40 to 70 range with stage 4.
Yeah, perfect. And a good way to think of what Rick talked about, it's almost like the 4 stages I've got here is the microcosm inside that processes stage. So if you think about that stage 4, stage 4, we really focus on processes. And this is almost like the 4 stages within the 4th stage. And it's thinking about the development of where your systems are up to. Kind of reminds me of Inuits, how, you and I and everybody else probably talks about snow. We just go, yeah, it's snow. But then Inuits have like hundreds of different names for different types of snow, because their expertise, being around snow and living in snow, they've come up with all. And that's when I think about systems, I've been around systems so much, I kind of start to have these distinctions about snow, just because this is what I think about most of the time. But a big part of this is thinking about what your business is going to look like when it's done. And if you can get that picture in your head, right, I'm in, as Richard mentioned, we're in between 2 and 3, right, we want to get to saleable. What does that look like? It makes it much easier to then start to think about which pieces are missing. So what done might look like, I think everybody should work towards having a saleable business. For Jeanette Farron, who runs a company here in Australia called Diggy Doggy Daycare, she had been working in that business for about 10 years and then realized she was coming up to the point where she was done and she'd had sufficient with that business. She actually came from a financial background, and then she started up this doggy daycare business with her sister and worked heavily in the business for about 10 years, decided that she wanted to exit, and then knew that the 2 things that an acquirer was going to look for was financial performance and repeatability. They if she wanted to get a very high multiple, which she did, she would need to do a strategic buy and have someone who wanted to buy it with bigger visions for the company. So she teamed up with an exit planner, started rolling out Systemology over the next it was about 2 years since she started the process. She really worked on getting the numbers right, all of the systems in place. And as she was doing this, she caught the attention of Petstock, which is Australia's second largest pet retailer. They saw what she was doing and said, we see this as the franchise prototype. And we see your store, this doggy daycare store, as a store that could be rolled out Australia-wide. So long story short, she got a really amazing exit. And when they acquired it, they cited financial performance and systems because they saw it as a franchise prototype. And she got significantly more than what she would have gotten if she just sold. Like she got, I think it was a little over 10 multiple for that exit. Now, there are different stories, and some people are going to sell, some people are going to franchise, some aren't. But there are other stories and you'll learn about it when you go through the Systemology book. For myself, I'd built up that digital agency. I had no plans on selling that business, and I had it run by a manager. She was the CEO, and she had a family crisis and had to move back to the US. And this was 3 years into her running it. And I was kind of like faced with that moment on, do I get sucked back into the business because I'd been out of it for 3 years, or do we sell it? And because we had the systems in place, it gave me that option. So you never actually know what is going to happen or what's around the corner. And systems just gives you optionality. It's almost like business insurance. So again, just building the case for why we need to have it in place. So what is Systemology? So Systemology, as I mentioned right at the start, I've read the books like many of you. All of them build up this case, but I felt like nothing really answered the question, but how do I do it? What are the stages? And we developed Systemology off the back of that, how to go from survival to saleable. And it's a 7-stage process that address some of the common myths around business systemization. Things like you're going to need hundreds of systems, or the business owner needs to create the systems, or creating systems is time consuming, or the team won't follow systems anyway, so what's the point of creating them, or that systems remove creativity. There's a lot of this baggage that floats around systems that this framework really addresses. And we'll start on stage number 1. And we'll go into that first one, which really answers the question, where do we start? But the high level is, stage 1 is define the 10 to 15 systems and where you're going to start. Assign is identify where the knowledge in the team that currently exists and who's already doing that task to a good standard. Step number 3 is, how do we get it out of their brain and make it easy? Because all great team members are busy. So we need to make sure it's really easy for them to get this down. Step 4 is about organize. How do we then get that knowledge into a central location? Step 5, integrate, is all about how do we get the team on board and overcome resistance and make sure that they see this is in their best interest. Step 6 is, what are all of the systems you're going to need to scale and reach what we call minimum viable systems? Like, this is applying the 80-20 to business systems. What are the 20% of the systems that are going to deliver 80% of the results, and how do we just focus on those? And lastly, then we look at what is the framework for optimization, and how do we get some benchmarks in place, and then lean on some of the frameworks for identifying issues, and always going and thinking, how do we solve this? Can this be solved at a systems level? So going back to what we talked about earlier, we just want to change your thinking to this systems view that all problems are systems problems. And once identified, where we can, we try and work on them at the systems level. So it's a little bit about Systemology, but the good thing is you'll grab a copy of the book. We'll send one out to everybody. I know Daniel mentioned he grabbed it on the Kindle yet, so you can also have a physical copy if you like as well. But let's jump on to that next slide. And I think one of the best ways to get started with this is to go through an exercise. And we've got our volunteer. Our volunteer has already volunteered, which is great. And where I learned this idea is that I used to, when I had the digital agency, had this guy who worked in the office opposite us, and we had these big glass windows, so I could look through my window and then into his window. And behind him, he was an ex-E-Myth coach, and he'd moved over from New Zealand after selling a business, started up an AdWords agency, and he thought, right, I'm going to systemize everything. And he went completely OCD on it. And what you're seeing here is a screenshot of the wall that was stuck behind him. So I'd looked through the window and this was stuck behind him. Now, these systems here, these aren't step one, do this, step two, do that. Each line here represents a system. So we're talking hundreds of systems he created. He stuck them to the wall behind him to remind the staff that, hey, we have systems for everything. And you can only imagine what ended up happening. This bombed tragically because it was so overwhelming. All of the systems got out of date very quickly because, he's working in the online space, and, Google's changing every 2 seconds and interfaces are changing. So everything was getting out of date. And it came like as a light bulb moment to the both of us that, it really is about the 80-20. How do we identify the core systems and hone those? Because your great staff and your great team members will be able to fill in the gaps and handle the exceptions, and they're kind of already doing it. We want to find out what are the core ones that need to be done a certain way, because as new team members come on board, that's how they get trained. And it's almost like, think of your business like a training organization. How do we take new team members and make them as productive as possible in the least amount of time? And systems is a great way to do that. And we don't train for the exceptions. They can talk to supervisors and team members when they get to the exceptions. Let's train for the most probable. And that's a big part of this first exercise. And the first stage in Systemology is, we call it the critical client flow. And it's about defining the most probable journey of our dream client through our business. And we use that as a starting point to then identify where is the pain inside this critical client flow. And that oftentimes is where we start. So I'm going to stop the share here. I'm going to jump over to my iPad, and our volunteer, I don't know if Richard, you're going to be our spokesperson, or if it's Eric or Kerry, but maybe just to start, I know you've been in the group for a long time, so many might know you, so we can keep it reasonably tight. But if you can tell us maybe just a little bit about your business, just so we all have that context around what you guys do.
Sure. Facings of America is a tile and stone importer and distributor, and we sell primarily B2B. So we're going after that group of commercial real estate, also residential construction and things like that.
Perfect. And we'll go through this exercise here. Everybody else can do the same. If you like, get a little bit of paper for yourself, or when you get the book, this is in chapter 1, the template's in there. I can arrange to have this template sent to Rick as well. We're going to describe that linear journey. So to start off with, we're going to identify our target client or our dream client. This is the person who would pay your advertised prices, refers friends and family, is a pleasure to deal with. You would love hundreds more of those clients. Can you, let us know a little bit about who that target client is?
So our critical client, we call a core customer, and that core customer sometimes has a label or a title of an architect or an interior designer, could be a builder, could be a contractor, and we've got more of a definition for that type of person that is. So our core customer views Facings of America as a partner and a valuable resource through the design process. Our ideal partner is a local design and construction industry professional who specifies tile and stone. Our partners are in alignment with our core beliefs, value our expertise and quality product assortment, and will act as an advocate for Facings within the design community.
Perfect. Now, sometimes on this exercise, when we've got a little bit more time and I'm working with someone, I'll even go a little bit deeper and we'll pick. So a local designer covers a lot of things like architects, builders, and a bunch of other ones that we mentioned. Sometimes I'll go even a touch deeper and we'll pick just one of them, which is oftentimes hard because some businesses will have multiple different clients and all those sorts of things. But we find by really niching down to a specific person like general contractors or whatever it might be, and you have a picture in your head of who that person might be. Maybe it's an existing client that you sell to and you go, "Ooh, they're awesome." Because the closer you get to identifying those, then it becomes easier once we get later on into things like grabbing someone's attention to go, where do these people hang out? So for example, the general contractors, we might go, oh, there's a general contractors magazine. Maybe there's an online thing or a YouTube channel, or when you get super clear on a very specific person, that makes it easier to go, where are more of these people? Whereas local designers, if that kind of bundles in some of the architects and some of the other ones, it makes it a little bit harder to identify. But that being said, we'll go with this just as a local designer I've put as the core customer. And if we think about the primary product or service, and everybody else is thinking about your business and also thinking about their business, what would you say is the core product that you would sell to this person? Is it like a complete house fit out, or what would be the first product that someone would start with when becoming introduced to what you do?
So when we're first introduced to somebody, normally the product is going to be the tile that we provide, but they're not going to give us a shot on the big project to begin with. So they're going to test us on a smaller, more entry level type project, but the product would be the same. They just wouldn't do it in that volume, if that makes sense.
That would be, that makes perfect sense. So after we've identified that, and this then makes it easier to describe this linear journey that we're about to go through here, that the local designer goes through from grabbing their attention all the way through to delivering the core product. And there's a couple of rules to the critical client flow. Firstly, the rule is only capture what you're currently doing, not what you would like to be doing, because it can be helpful if you'll find that certain areas are patchy, or it might be really well filled out, but that can be quite instructive. The other rule is the boxes are small by design. You can only put 1 or 2 words in here, and the detail comes later. So that way we kind of have to really get the essence of what each of these different stages are. So if with those in mind, let's think about attention. What are some of the ways that you grab the attention of your local designers?
The first would probably be our showrooms.
Perfect. And any others come to mind? Do you run any sort of ads or run at any expos or?
Social media for sure. So Instagram primarily, but all social media platforms.
Yeah. Anything else come to mind?
Networking.
On steroids.
And in that same group, you could put associations. So
perfect.
Okay, or in that.
Yeah, love it. Okay, and for everybody who's sort of following along at home, it's okay if you don't fill all the boxes. And if you've got a couple more, you can kind of add those in. But generally, I try and prioritize to the ones that are performing best. And that's just a great starting point. So when we grab the attention of this local designer, how does your inquiry come in? Is it like phone, website, email, combination of all of the above heading into the showroom?
I'm going to say probably a combination of all of the above. Typically, it's going to start with a reach out, text, social media, or a text or phone call or something like that.
Yeah. And for the, I'm assuming as well, like if you think about, because we're only putting a couple of words into each of these boxes, and later on we'll talk about each one of these boxes can evolve into a system, there's probably a range of things that are happening underneath here. For example, the text and the phone comes in, and maybe there's some basic level of qualification. You know, are they even a great fit? If they are a great fit and they kind of escalate, what does the sales process look like? Do you encourage them into the showroom? Does it happen via Zoom? Is it just over the phone?
It's a combination of showroom and us going to them. We'll visit their office, bring them products, show them what we can do and things like that, as well as they will come in to look at the products that we have in our showroom.
Perfect. And if we picked, and it might be evenly split, you might go, it's pretty much 50-50. But if we think about the local designer who's just getting started, it's their first smaller project, generally speaking, is there one that they might do over the other?
They're going to make us go to their office.
Yep.
And we're going to show them we're willing to do that.
So there's some sort of office visit. Yep. And in that office visit, you obviously take, product, and you're going to, there's probably a little bit of a process. Again, and we'll get deeper into the process as we go. But you'll find, there's a greeting, there's probably a handful of things that you go through in that process. Towards the end of that, what generally happens is there, hey, we need the specs to quote this up, or, hey, I'll leave you with these products and you get back to us, or what generally happens after the office visit?
Ideally, they tell us they're going to write us in the spec and we're good to go. That doesn't always happen. Normally, they tell us we're too expensive, and then we have to go justify that.
Yep.
Most of the time, they're going to say, leave me the samples. I'll show them to my client and get approval. And that is the project cycle.
Got it. And then they're going to go off and show it to the client and then get sign off on that. And then they come back to you with a spec order.
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. And then once that spec order comes in, what normally happens? Do you then quote it all up and then circle back around and go, great, here's the quote, or how does that work?
Once we're written into the specification, then it's up to the general contractor and the subcontractors to go through what they call a bidding process. And so everything will go out to bid. So we'll be quoting to the subcontractor typically.
Cool. And then once we go through the bidding process, what generally happens? Do you take any money up front? Is it like a 50-50, or do you get paid at the end of the job?
Depends if it's a commercial project or a residential project. But
so let's go for the local designer tile job, smaller project.
So we did all this is all relevant so far, but if it's a commercial project, no, it's a small job, so we're going to get paid. Yeah, we'll collect some money. We'll get a 50% deposit.
Perfect. And once that happens, is there anything, once you get the money, is there anything else that needs to happen? Think of it almost like an onboarding process. Is there, do you need to, everything that happens right up front for the start of the project, where it's, I don't know, maybe it's getting them into your system, your project management system in the back end. Maybe it's, going out and doing the original measure up, or you might go, that's part of delivery. It depends. Different businesses are different. Sometimes they'll need to fill out a questionnaire and do a bunch of things like that. Do you have, is there any steps here? And maybe it's just placing the order, doing the measure up and then placing the order. You consider that the onboarding process, and then the delivery process might be the laying of the tiles, or actually no, the contractor's doing that. So yeah, is there anything that you would say is like onboarding, which would be more probably around the ordering of it, I'm imagining?
So we would fulfill the order for certain. If they've given us a solid order, we fulfill the order. Absolutely being entered into probably 3 of our 4 computer systems that we have, all that information and data from a CRM standpoint. hopefully we're doing our job, and that is getting in front of them again. So part of the B2B type business that we have is after the completion of a successful transaction, we'd like to get back in front of them to find out if there's a possibility for another transaction. So part of our onboarding is to learn more about them, and it is to help them get better at their business. It's to service them on the next project, those types of things.
So if we say, the onboarding being, we're getting them into the system, we're ordering the product, and then the delivery is, and you probably might have the stock already sitting in your warehouse, ready to go. But then there's the delivery of it. There's the packing of the product up. There's the sending it. Then there's the follow-up bit that you're talking about. How do we get back up in front of them to make sure that they're happy, or potentially that might even fit down here, some sort of follow-up process.
Yep.
So that journey, now certain parts of this it's the same for everybody, are going to be more complex than others. So for example, the onboarding and the delivery here, there's probably going to be a range of sub-steps and milestones and things that need to happen for selling of the product and delivering of that product versus the 50% deposit, issuing out an invoice through QuickBooks or something like that. It's less complex. But for now, we just think high level. What this does is this gives us a starting point, because it's all focused around how the business makes money. And the more that we can work on removing key person dependency on how the business makes money on a core product or service with a dream client is a great starting point. And again, just because you don't systemize it doesn't mean it magically stops happening in your business. And you're still selling commercial jobs and you're still doing the different types of jobs. All we're saying is, if we're going to start somewhere, where do we start? And if we're going to capture one most probable path, and probably when new staff start with you, this is probably a good place for them to learn. Like, you probably don't want them on the high-end commercial projects with some of your best clients. Maybe it's starting with a smaller project with a local designer who's just getting started. Like, that would be a great place for newer team members. And this is the type of training can help them sort of get off the ground. But if we have a look at this for you, Richard, and we think about, is there any pain in this document? Like, if you said, which is the most undercooked area, or if you had 100 more local designers ready to go and purchase these tiles, which part for you breaks first?
Everything from attention to repeat.
So if
I was just kidding. It's not that bad. There's room for improvement in every area.
Is there a part that heavily focuses on you, Kerry, or Eric being sort of part of the key leadership team here, or ones that are probably the least well performing?
Taking it from the office visit to get to the specification, there's a big gap between there. So obviously that's here we're going to show you a product, and then having the person say we're going to buy that product. There's a lot that goes in there, and that probably right in between those two is our biggest focus and our biggest breakdown.
Got it.
Least successful.
Yeah, perfect. So this exercise here, and there's probably, like you said, lots of steps that are happening in the office visit, and potentially if they don't place the spec order straight away, there's going to be quite a bit around what is the follow-up process to make sure, like if they've taken the product and they're off to show their client, and what's happening there to try and keep on that. This area here is probably, if you're going to start anywhere, a great place to start to think about what are you going to systemize first, because it's right in obviously the delivery of the core product or service. It's mission critical. A lot of money gets spent on the attention to get those leads in the door. and you've got a qualified lead if you've had an office visit and if you've put out some sort of proposal. So spending time on converting that is probably a great place to start. Now, everybody's different. So I've done this exercise hundreds of times with different businesses, and some people, they struggle with leads, and it's very clear because they only have, they rely on just referral business. Some people will struggle with the delivery of the product or service because they say, look, we don't really, and it's different for service-based business versus product business. You're a product-based business. So the delivery, the mechanics, you've got the tiles, you're kind of shipping it out. It's not like it's a complex service delivery where different stages to do certain works might need to be complete, and you're not doing the install either. So everybody can apply this in their business. And this tool as well, like if you just focused on getting that stream of systems as a mission critical down and documented well and a defined way of doing things, this really pulls the team together, is a great starting point for team to understand, well, what's happening before me, what's happening after me, and helps to also create that responsibility of, I've got to set things up right on the office visit, because if I do the office visit wrong, then whoever's doing the spec order won't have all of the details they need to properly put the spec order together. Or, hey, if we don't get everything set up properly on the delivery process, the final follow-up process to see how they're going falls down because the client isn't happy anyway that they didn't quite get the result. So it kind of helps to see how everything's interlinked. Is there anything else, like as you went through that exercise, that kind of stood out for you, or did you find that helpful?
I found it very helpful. The clarity on even how we're attracting people.
Yeah.
I mean, that is indeed the first step, right?
Yeah. I'll make sure. Actually, I've got your email, so I'll send you a copy of the critical client flow as well, and you can kind of work through the book, and that'll give you, some ideas on what the next stages are. Because then you start to think about, well, where is the knowledge? Who is the best person on the team who currently performs office visits? How do we find out what they're doing and codify that? And how do we do it easily? Because they're probably very good at what they do, and great team members are usually very busy. And the last thing they're going to want to do is sit down and write some good old processes for you. So we have to talk about, how do we make this easy for them and to capture that process? So I'm going to jump back to my slides here. Hopefully I can just jump back here. Where's this window? That's the one I'm after. I'm just going to share my screen. And the other thing, hopefully everybody also went through that exercise, thought about their own business. And if you want to even just type into the chat, if you found that helpful in uncovering, this is an area of pain that might be good for you to start on. So again, think about where the pain is and start there. Now, we'll pick up pace in sort of the last 30 minutes we've got, because I want to make sure that we also have a little bit of time for a couple of Q&A if we need to, and to get John and Rick to comment as well. So what we're going to talk about now is this idea of quickly and easily creating systems, which is the next step. How do we make it easy? So I think when business owners and even leadership team members, like everybody really, has a picture in their head of what they think systems are, oftentimes this picture comes from something that they've seen. So if you want to type into the chat or let me know, when you think of business systems, what is the poster child, or which companies come to mind as the poster child of well systemized businesses? And we'll just, this is just a quick pop quiz here. Rick, who's the first company that comes to mind when you think of a systemized business?
Well, you talked about McDonald's already.
Perfect. All right. Well, I've seeded it. That's right. Let's go with McDonald's.
That Big Mac tastes the same regardless. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Richard's got a great one. There's a local tire company here called Discount Tire, which is quite large.
Yes.
Amazingly well organized and process driven.
And oftentimes companies like that, they've been doing it for a long time. And what tends to happen is people look at where they are today and then they go, oh, Discount Tires is a well-systemized business. I need to systemize like Discount Tires. But it's a product of continual improvement and innovation. And if you look at where they are today and you try and start there, you kind of need to think about where the puck was. And you need to start there. Otherwise, it becomes overwhelming. Otherwise, you over-engineer this. Otherwise, you create, you don't focus on the critical few. And not only that, if we think about McDonald's, as we said earlier, chances are you're not building a hamburger business or you're not building a tire business. So your business is going to be different anyway. Especially with McDonald's, I often say, you're not hiring 15-year-old kids with the intention of taking them off the street and having them flipping hamburgers over the course of a weekend. You're going to hire intelligent team members that are A players who come pre-baked with a lot of knowledge. And we're not telling them how to suck eggs. We're giving them a framework on how to succeed in your business. We don't need to tell them to click here, to click there, to do this. Like, they're going to know how, if you hire a finance person, they're going to know how to create a monthly P&L for you. You're not going to have to create a system that painstakingly tells you exactly how to do that process. So I want to start to rewire the way that people think about systems. And when I talk about systems, it really is it's a set of steps that, when followed, create a consistent outcome. So a business system is a set of steps that, when followed, create this consistent outcome. Now, that might be a video, that might be a checklist. Think about what is easiest first. Oftentimes it's a video, and it might just be a short little video of someone issuing out an invoice, or maybe it's an audio recording of someone handling, some incoming inquiries. Maybe it's next time you do an office visit, you just, take your mobile phone and you put the recorder on and say, hey, client, I'm just going to record this for you so I can send you a copy of the recording afterwards, in case I've said anything that would be helpful for you to refer to. And you do that a few times. And once you've got 10 different recordings, now you have a base set of what these office meetings might sound like, or these office visits might sound like. And from there, you can pull out the key steps, and you separate. It's a two-person job. It's not, there's a knowledgeable worker. And oftentimes we talk about the documenter or a systems champion who listens to that material and then teases out the key steps. And they might go, oh, in that office visit, typically there's 4 stages we go through. There's some sort of greeting at the start. Then, we sit down and we show them, we ask them some questions about their situation. Here's some general questions we ask. And then after that, we show them the product and, help to explain the benefits and why our product is superior, and then blah, 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 blah. Like, it becomes more obvious if you just start off recording the thing happening, because everybody's busy. Your best team members are busy, business owners are busy, and not everybody likes documenting systems and processes. So if you say to your best team members and you rule with an iron fist and you say, we're going systems, all of us have to write systems, and you've got to do this or you're fired. Like, that's one way to do it, but I don't think you're going to get your team excited and motivated by that. And there are a few little tweaks that you can make that will make it infinitely easier. So a good way to explain this is with an example. So I use this example here of Chris Mulcahy. He runs a company called Mulcahy & Co. And they're an accountant in regional Victoria. And what they do is they help agricultural farms. They help them with cash flow management, tax planning. Now, Chris had read The E-Myth, Michael Gerber's book, and then he read Systemology and he instantly got it. He said, Systemology is the how-to guide of The E-Myth. So he started off and he did the critical client flow, just like everybody did here. Then he identified, and there's 2 secrets I want to share for this extraction process is, firstly, systemization and documentation is a 2-person job. You've got the knowledgeable worker and you've got the person who does the documentation. Now, Chris identified Rachel, who became his systems champion. She was a junior admin who worked in the office, who had a little bit of extra capacity, who understood a bit about the business. He got her to read the Systemology book. And what ended up happening is she ended up developing internally and becoming the person who really took charge of the systems. The second secret is you develop, one of the first things that systems champion develops is your system for creating systems. How do you extract? What does good documentation look like? Where is this system going to be saved? And you give a little bit of that process. Now, I'll give you my system for creating systems. It's in the Systemology book, so you'll all get a copy of that. But it's quite simple. It's a matter of identifying your mission critical systems, recording those tasks getting done. Sometimes it's with a Zoom, sometimes it's with a Loom, sometimes it's a GoPro, sometimes it's your iPhone, like whatever you need to record it happening in the moment to make it easy. Even if it's raw, even if it's bad, even if you fumble over it, whatever, just record it, because systems, the first time you catch them is the worst they're ever going to be. And every time you iterate after that, once you've got version 1 and you go, oh, we now have 4 steps and milestones that someone goes through for this office visit. Now, next time, 6 months down the track, someone, that knowledgeable worker uses that framework and you re-record it happening, and they're kind of loosely following those steps. Now it's getting closer and closer, and that recording can replace the other one. Now, I think this has just absolutely blown Eric away, so much so that he's got up out of his seat and he's walked out and he thought that was the amazing breakthrough I've ever had.
He had the epiphany of systems, just a system in place for creating a system, and then he had to leave. That's all.
Yeah, that's right. He was like, that's it. I've got everything I need. This was amazing. So then the next step after that is taking those videos, and then your systems champion starts to create basic documentation. The thing is, this is not going to happen on its own. Systemizing a business, which we all know is important, won't happen magically. You've got to create space for it. And as a business owner, you're probably the worst person in the team to be doing it. So we need to find your systems champion. We need to put them in charge. They need to be a detail-orientated person who naturally creates systems and processes, who is organized and does checklists and loves to file and things like that. And who knows, maybe you hire someone short-term to do this. Maybe it's someone who's already on your team and has some capacity, but you've got to find someone to drive this. That's the real key here. And we kind of move into the last bit of today's presentation, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A at the end, is getting your team on board. And this part, I learned this actually from my dad, that some people are systems people and some people aren't systems people. So you can see, if you squint there, up here, it says 88. So that's 1988. Now, I was born in 81. So I was just a young tacker here, and Chris is my brother, and David, that's me. And my dad created this thing he called the sheet, and it's a system he created to gamify my brother and my life. And we could basically earn points for doing different things. Like if we went to bed at a certain time, we'd earn points. If we cleaned our bedroom, if we were good to our brother, if we did our teeth, if we cleaned the bird cage. Basically, it was a system to get us to earn points. And you can see here on a Friday night, because my dad used to stay up till all hours, on a Friday night, as a 7-year-old, if I got in bed before 10:15 p.m., I could still earn 2 points, which is pretty amazing. I think my dad, let me tell you, my 2 boys these days, they're in bed by 8 o'clock. So maybe he had a different way. But basically, this system here would then, at the end of the week, he would tally up all of the points. And there's a legend on the final screen, or the final page rather, that he would use to calculate how much pocket money we got for the week. And
my daughter did a similar thing for her 2 kids. It's amazing how it organizes them and motivates them.
Yeah, and it was like off the charts, where he went down to this minute detail. If I got 3 weeks running with points over 250, I would unlock a special bonus, and I would get bonus pocket money. Now, I got so good at this game that my dad had to start changing the scoring legend, because he said I'd bleed him dry. Now, what I found really interesting was I didn't mind the game. I liked the game. I followed the sheet. My brother hated the sheet. My brother didn't follow the sheet. My brother didn't get any pocket money. My brother did not want to participate. And it gave me this real clear understanding that some people will follow process and some people won't. And that's okay. Now, in family, you can't choose your family, but in business, you can choose your staff. So as you start recruiting, thinking about your recruiting and your onboarding systems, finding team members that connect with systems and can follow process might be really great as part of your recruitment process. Now, as you think about, where the resistance is going to come from, there's really two types of staff. You've got your existing staff and you've got your new staff. Now, for existing staff, that's where you're going to get the biggest resistance to this. They're going to say, we've always done it this way. Why do we need to change? Or some team members might have created this little black box around them where no one really knows what they're doing. And they do that for job security so that they're safe because you're dependent on them. So there's going to be resistance from there. There's going to be some people that will take this on board, but all of the resistance is going to come from your existing staff. New staff, they don't know any better. If you build an onboarding system and a recruiting system, and as part of the job description, you link to 5 systems and you say, as part of your job, here are the 5 systems that are important to your role. And you make that abundantly clear up front that you're a systems-driven business and this is the way that we do things here. If they're not the right fit, they're going to opt out. And you don't get resistance from these new staff. It's really the existing staff, which means all of the pain for building a systems-driven business happens up front. So you need to be aware of that. You need to be ready for that. And you don't get all of the benefits that come from building a saleable business until you get over that hump. Now, that hump, depending on the size of your organization, might take 6 months. It might take 12 months. And if you give up halfway, then you don't get the benefits of the systemization. And a lot of business owners go, oh, systems, yeah, look, I tried that, but it didn't work for me. Oh, my team won't follow process. And it's because they gave up halfway. You've got to get over the hump. And once you're over the hump and it doesn't happen naturally, that's why you need a systems champion. And the business owner oftentimes isn't wired to systems. So you can see there is all of these things that undermine and chip away building a systems culture. And this is why it's so hard for a lot of business owners, because they're not systems people. They want the benefit of it. They're not necessarily the best ones to drive it. And business owners come up with the latest and greatest idea, every other week. They're ideas people. So, but this particular one requires follow through. And that's really what you need to work on. You need to burn the bridges and say, this is what we're doing. You need to find a systems champion. You got to lean into this. You got to commit and you will get the rewards, but you kind of got to get through that. And you'll start to build systems around the way that you recruit. We know the labor market is challenging at the moment. We know team members, to get great people is challenging. So if we think about what is our recruitment strategy, how do we attract in great people? How do we show them that, we're a great organization to work with? How do we make sure that they'll fit into our systems culture? Getting clear on the staff that you're looking for, just like you get clear on who your dream client is, you can get clear on who your dream staff member is. And then it's the same attraction mechanism. And we think about onboarding. Well, when they come on board, what are you going to teach them? Teach them the critical client flow. Teach them their critical systems. Teach them this is how we do things here. Lead by example and get some of these ideas installed in their brains early. And it makes all the difference because you set the expectation. So you're looking for intelligent people. You're wanting to give them a framework where they can win and succeed. Systems aren't about building robots. Systems are about saying, here's the key milestones. This is how we do it here. Because I remember reading an article by Reed Hastings, who is from Netflix, and he was talking about when they started building a systems culture. He said, first of all, we tried to systemize everything because we wanted to make our business foolproof, and we wanted to have every aspect of the business documented. And he goes, we got to that point where everything was documented, and it was foolproof. But the only issue was only fools wanted to work here, because they kind of stripped away, like they went too far. And that's what we need to find the right balance for. We want to support and give great team members what they need, but we don't want to introduce and over document and over create bureaucracy. This is not about red tape. This is about efficiency and reducing errors and skilling up team members as quickly as possible, and making sure that it's easy for one team member to pass to the next team member and know things are done a certain way. So, as I mentioned, happy to give everybody who's attended here and really anyone in Rick and John's group. You guys are an astute group, and anything we can do to support you, as Rick and John have supported the work that we're doing. Great place to start is with the book. So if you email groove@systemology.com, just mention that you were on this webinar or that you watched this webinar. Make sure you include your mailing address, and then we'll get a copy of the book out to you. So it's groove@systemology.com. Now,
we'll make sure and include that in the follow-up, David, that we do after this, because we send the link to the recording and a copy of the presentation and stuff, and we'll make sure and put that in there and also blast it out to all of our members too. So thank you for that generous offer.
Yeah, pleasure. So I think the big thing here is just to expect challenges and be ready for this up front. Like, if you buy into this idea of building a systems culture, and look, I've seen businesses that have systems and businesses that don't, and it's a night and day difference. I will never build a business again without systems. Systems for me is at the core. They are the building blocks and foundations of all great business. So I've already committed to that. If you're doing that for the first time, you realize there will be challenges. There will be team members who won't follow process. There will be team members who will resist change. The good thing is there has never been a better time to change than right now, because you can blame everything on COVID. Hey, the reason we have to put systems in place is because you might get sick, a family member might get sick, you might need time out. We want to make sure we've got flexible work arrangements. You might need to work from home some of the time. And if we don't have good systems in place and we don't get this right, then this is all going to fall over. So blame it on COVID, make the change, understand there's going to be resistance, and try and plan for it up front. In your head, you might know, yep, this is going to work well, but everybody's going to like this except for Jenny. Jenny is not going to like this. So start to think about, well, how can we position this so Jenny sees this as a win? At least let's give Jenny the best chance of success. That's the other thing. A lot of people, when they introduce systems as a business owner, they think about it from their point of view, not the team member's point of view. And the team member, all they hear is, oh, wow, he's trying to figure out, or she's trying to figure out what I'm doing. Does this mean they're trying to replace me? Does it, like, is my job at risk here? Do I really want to be showing them what I'm doing? And there's these sorts of things bubble up for them. And, oh, this is just about creating more profits for the business. Well, how does that help me? You have to reframe it and let them know the benefit to them. And everybody's different. Sometimes it's, hey, when you take a holiday and you take a week off and I'm texting you and I'm calling you saying, oh, where's this client up to? Where did you put that thing? Oh, I know you're on holiday, but can you just call that client just to kind of let them know that you'll be back next week? And nothing gets done while you're away on holiday, and you come back after a week off and you've got 300 emails in your inbox. Nothing has moved forward, and you spend the next 2 months making up for the 1 week that you had off. Well, by getting systems in place, we can have other team members to back you up so you can disconnect, take time off, be with your family, really enjoy that time. And when you come back, you can hit the ground running because we've got good systems, because everybody can step in and help you. That might appeal to some person. Other people, it might be, hey, do you want to work your way up in our organization? the way that you do that is by systemizing what you do and delegating some of those tasks down to lower cost team members. By passing on tasks to people that are cheaper in the business, you're actually making yourself more valuable, because now you're able to work on higher value tasks. So that might appeal to another person. They might want to work their way up in the organization, but you have to think about what appeals to the team member and help them to see that this is a win for them. So I suppose in wrapping, we talked a little bit about where we are now, the 4 stages, thinking about where you are, and we want to get you to saleable. Talked a little bit about Systemology, didn't go too deep because we'll just give you a copy of the book. We went through the exercise with Facings of America, and we talked about what does the critical client flow look like, and you can apply that to your own business. We talked about quickly and easily creating systems, and 2 big takeaways. We had Richard mention, the system for creating systems. That was a biggie. And then we also had this idea that it's a 2-person job. You've got the knowledgeable worker and you've got a documenter, and you've got to find, your systems champion. And we also then finished up a little bit around this idea of getting your team on board, addressing some of the resistance, recruiting for the right people. Obviously, there's a lot that we covered here, and we kind of just hammered through it. Obviously, you can claim a copy of the book to get some of those answers. We can answer some questions now, but perhaps we'll kind of, in the tail end, take a few questions. Rick and John, is there anything, firstly, that stood out to you about the way that we're teaching Systemology that may be different or an important component of the way to think about systems? Because I know it's a very undercooked area in a lot of different methodologies and operating systems.
Well, it's certainly, when you talk about adapting and adoption, right? CMS has always been call recording. I'm going blanks. Sales tracking. Help me, John. CRM. Woo! I can tell it's a long day. Anyway, the adoption of CRM, right? When you're trying to get CRM has always been perceived as creating management reports, and the whole idea of how do you engage a sales force to show them where the value is. That's really some of what you were talking about there. And the other thing that jumped out at me that I hadn't really thought about was when you're talking about who you're recruiting, and are you recruiting people that have a systems and or detail orientation? Because I don't think we often think about it in that context. So that's a couple of things that stood out at me. John?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I would, I'm a big advocate of what David was talking about. I've had some experience with it. I'm going to go back to one of the more troubling ones, which was with IBEW workers in Detroit. Now, the IBEW is kind of a serious union to deal with. In any event, all people do not like dealing with problems caused by somebody else. I haven't met anybody that really says, "Oh God, this is great. Because David screwed up, I got to deal with this and I'm going to be frustrated," and all that. So the motivation is to minimize frustration. And the process that I used, which is kind of supports what you were saying, you identify the process that you're talking about, and then go through step by step everything that has to happen to make that happen. The second thing is say, okay, if this process goes perfect, absolutely perfect. And by the way, they immediately, the team that was doing it went, it never goes perfect. I got it. But if it went perfect, what would that look like? How much time would it take? So then we described that, and it says, okay, you said it doesn't happen. So tell me what happens when it doesn't go perfectly. And they go, well, this, and this. Okay, got it. So what's the consequence of that happening? And they go, well, I don't do this and this happens, and it screws up the installation. I'm getting delayed. I'm going to get yelled at by the blah, blah, got it. So how often does that happen? Well, sometimes they'll remember one instance that happens every year, but you're looking for those things that happen frequently. And then you're now talking about what we know have identified, what we have to solve to get rid of that pain and that frustration.
I think what I loved about what John said there as well is he really leaned into the idea of capturing what you're currently doing first. Even when you talk about, where does it go off track? Don't try and optimize the first time you create a system. This is where so many people go wrong. They think about process improvement. They think about Lean and Six Sigma, and they think about, hey, this is broken and let's completely re-engineer it and make the best process in the world, and then we'll follow this. Instead, first capture what is currently best practice, because the biggest issue most businesses face is repeatability. So at the very minimum, even if it's not the best practice, you will get significant wins by going, well, who is the best salesperson? Let's just capture what they're currently doing, and now let's bring everybody up to that standard. Don't necessarily think what is world-class systems. We have to get a benchmark. And part of this is once you've got what you're currently doing down, then you layer in some metrics. It actually makes it infinitely easier to bring the specialist in and say, hey, this is what we're currently doing. We do it consistently. These are our numbers. And we know that it's happening consistently because we've got some process here. Now, can you help me re-engineer? And you're optimizing off a base, which will get you significantly better results when you're working with that specialist. But it's a great way to get some quick wins in the business. So I might see, Richard, I don't know, and it could be Kerry or Eric. I'd love to know if anything jumped out at you from what we went through today.
I liked it all, specifically towards the end when you told us how we sell this to the staff, because implementing something, or us coming up with an idea and trying to implement it and having it go nowhere is incredibly frustrating and costly. So I like the ideas that you gave us on how to implement it. I'm going to go straight to that chapter when I get my free book. I can tell you that.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Yeah, how to engage and enroll. It's kind of one of those, Richard, right? I can tell them, but it's better if we develop it as a team, right? By asking lots and lots of questions as opposed to directing. So good insight.
For me, it was the 80-20.
Yes.
Start this process, you really think, let me go do everything, and not realizing that you're going to be wasting a lot of valuable time and having to concentrate on those 20.
Yes,
Good.
That's a good one, Eric. And I think just because you don't document it doesn't mean it's going to magically stop happening in your business. It'll keep happening. Really, all we're looking at doing is capturing the most probable. And that's a great starting point. We can get to exceptions and variations and things like that later. So yeah, great insight. And how about you, Kerry? I kind of feel like we've saved the best to last here.
Oh, David. No, I really.
So Kerry, what did Eric and Richard miss?
Yes.
I hate to say, when I was thinking about the hiring and the onboarding, because we're kind of in that process right now. So I'm already thinking of questions to ask, in an interview, or some cool questions to think are hiring people that are more systematic in what they're doing and kind of digging that out ahead of time instead of finding out later that that's the struggle.
Yeah. Well, that's also, you guys are doing a great job using tools, using assessments and stuff, which of course is one of our best practices, right? And in much of I know you guys are I think you're using DISC, but in there, you can look for your S&Cs that are more detailed, steadiness and things that are more detail oriented based on their style. Because you can't take your D or an I and necessarily make them, dominance and influence, or make them detail oriented. Speaking as one of those. So yeah. So let's open it up to are there any other folks out there that have any questions for David in the last couple of minutes here?
Yeah, it looks like we had some good comments in there from Daniel. I don't know, Daniel, if anything jumped out for you, and in the chat, I know Crystal and Benjamin are there.
I don't know if he's still there. If he's take a look.
Well, we're right on time. So, I mean, you've got Groove at Systemology.com will get to me as well. So if you've got some specific questions, feel free to add those in. I'll do my best to help, or at the very least, I'll point you in the right direction, and we'll make sure to get you a copy of the book as well.
Awesome. So David, thank you. What a great job. We just have a couple of closing comments. If you'd like to stick with it, that'd be great. Here's David's book. You've got his website to go out there and check. Well, how do they access your podcast, David?
Yeah, if you go to systemology.com and then partway down the screen, you'll see a couple of episodes. There's one I did with Michael Gerber and a few of those. If you just click one or two of those links, you'll get to the podcast.
Yeah, Gerber said some nice stuff in your book, didn't he?
Yes, he said the book is
Yes.
extraordinary. So it doesn't
Yes.
get any better than that.
Yeah, no, when you have the guru saying you got it, that's good. So our upcoming webinar series, we do not have a webinar scheduled for July this year. We're off on summer vacation. In August, we have Chris Younger and Dave Olson, a couple of investment bankers out of Denver who are going to talk about building company value. Mark Green, many of you remember Mark. Mark was a keynoter at our all-member meeting a while back. Steve Baker from Great Game of Business will be back with us in November. We discovered ITR, which is a great KPI and metrics organization, forecasting and leading ones, will be January. Brad Gillies is coming back. I think you know Brad, don't you? He's down in your part of the world, down in Australia, New Zealand. Brad is our February keynoter. Lars Houghton, Kaihan Krippendorf will be back with us on Outthink. And then Kevin Lawrence will be here for our strategies. A couple things, we're in the final registration for our 3 series that we offer. The financial acumen for non-financial managers. John Shearer still has a few seats left. That does start next month. So if you want to put somebody in there, this is targeted towards your leadership team and how to read financials, balance sheets, cash flow, all of those things. It's a phenomenal 5-month class. And then of course, both of our LFP1 and LFP2, Adam's down to a couple seats in each. So if you've got somebody, just let Adam know because he's about to fill and close that one up. So our next all member meeting is in October. Will be Friday, October the 7th. We have Kaplan Mowbray coming in from York. Kaplan is all about, he'll be focused on leadership and talent. Very inspirational, high energy young man. And so he's going to be awesome for our all member coming up. So mark your calendar for Friday, October the 7th. David, if you happen to be in the States, you're welcome to join us in any of these. So we'll thank everybody. We're right up on 2:30. Again, David, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom, knowledge, and for your sharing. And we thank you, John. Any closing comments?
Nope. Good.
Nope. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.